Alright, we'll start this video anyway, see how far I get. Maybe I'll do it in parts, maybe I'll do it in parts and tie them together or something or whatever. Maybe I'll post the video on Brett Keene's website. It's kind of funny, it sort of looks like Brett Keene. Anyway, male pig. But anyway, Brett's a nice guy. Yeah, well, he's not a nice guy, but he's... Well, never mind, it's not the subject of the video at all. So, dospook, so response video, and so yeah, we're just going to get into this strangling of concepts and ideas, as if we don't know what these concepts are, as if, you know, we're going to sit there and just use words to unravel them and make the words not mean anything. Fine. I don't do that. Yeah, it doesn't appeal to me.
Hey, just saw a video on the efilist channel from Gary, where he's reading the comments left on Graytex's most recent video, and I guess I'll link that video in the low bar. And I bring up, I have a comment on there, and Gary, you know, finds that comment to be a little bit unsavory at best. And what I bring up in it is the difference between connotation versus denotation. And
yeah, well, so again, you want to play this is I called it what it is. It's a word game. You want to play word games. What we're talking about is description. All right, that's the real value of words, is they have definitions, and the definitions are descriptions. And so when you tie a bunch of words together, you're basically tying a bunch of descriptions together. Okay, I mean, red car, you know, red's a word, red has a meaning. Car's a concept. We know what a car is, basically in form and structure. Could be small, could be, you know, we could modify the words with other words, but they have definition. You know, they have a confinement that's logic-based, reason-based, and ideally you want words to actually mean something. You don't want them to be ambiguous, where somebody just makes it up, like love. You know, it's just some sort of placeholder for a bunch of emotions. In the word life, I would argue that people say the word and they're not really saying what they might be talking about. Are they talking about non-sentient life or sentient life? You know, these are important distinctions, and there is no distinctions made. And they really have to be made in a sense, because fundamentally the two life forms are very different.
here he stumbles over the word connotation in his video. It's like he's not certain what it is I'm talking about. He says that I'm making...
Well, I'm certain enough when I said denotation that it was you're playing this game with how we notate words, and I'm saying there is no, this is a game. There's no point in doing this. Language, we should take all of that ambiguity out of language and try to make it as explicit as possible, especially when you're going to be philosophers. When you're going to be doing philosophy, you shouldn't be using jokers and wild cards and all this other crap. You should play the game straight.
Up word games, but I'm not making up word games with the difference between connotation and denotation. As a matter of fact, what I'm doing is I'm trying to expose that the antinatalist argument seems to be based on connotation and not on denotation.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm just going to argue it's not that fucking complicated. I mean, this is really just obnoxious and annoying. I've reduced it to the simplest of words. Consumption, that's what it is. Reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. The word imposition. You don't know what the word imposition means anymore? You can figure out that something's an imposition all over the world. You can complain about goddamn Halliburton or complain about Monsanto. And they're imposing this lousy, rotten, modified wheat on the world and these modified crops, and they're imposing it. You could call that imposition. But no, all of a sudden when it's somebody else's behavior or some other circumstance where you don't want this negative word used, all of a sudden you don't know what the word imposition means anymore. It's just bullshit. I mean, there's no point in it. I have no desire to play convoluted, intricate, idiotic, fake word games. And that's all they are. They're just fake. Reality isn't that complicated. It's made up of material things that do simple material stuff. And you want to make it all mystical and make it all complicated, fine. That's your fucking prerogative. Alright? But it has nothing to do with anything I want to do while I exist on planet Earth. I don't want to make things foggier and messier and sloppier. I want to make them clearer, more precise, and more solid.
And this is an example. Like, connotation would be calling a John who's picked up a prostitute a dirty dog. Oh, you're a dirty dog, right? You're giving him a negative value. You're stating something negative about him. But the denotation is he's just a man who happened to pick up a prostitute, right?
Right, yeah, well, obviously there's all kinds of what you can add to that man just picking up a prostitute. Well, what does that implicate? It's like saying man just owning a slave, or a man just doing, so obviously there could be a whole lot of connotation, but there could be that is quite factual and actual. All right, that there is an element in the behavior that maybe you don't want to have to explicitly diagram exactly why this is sort of offensive to women and their blah blah blah, and it's exploitation, another word. That might have this element of exploitation, and that's what creates this dirty dog negative connotation. But I don't see any point in calling him a dirty dog. Yeah, that's useless mush. All right, but calling it what it is, that if it's perhaps an act of exploitation.
So you can call him a dirty dog, where a denotation would be seeing a dog in mud and talking to the dog and saying you're a dirty dog. It's a literal description. And so what I'm doing is I'm suggesting that antinatalists, a lot of their premises, their root description of things is connotative.
Yeah, well, that's your accusation, but I don't think you can back it up with anything. I don't back it up with any quotes. I mean, the statements are pretty clear, and it seems quite obvious that you're the one attempting to escape literal use of language.
It's negative. And, for example, the imposition argument. They constantly argue that there's an imposition, that life is an imposition. And a long time ago, I had this discussion with Gary, and I didn't feel that he was adequate in describing how I was wrong in this, but...
I mean, it's just so stupid, right? I mean, it's an act of volition, okay? Like you could say, okay, I can't help but breathe, right? So I create carbon dioxide, and so, yeah, I'm imposing my carbon dioxide on the universe. Because, yeah, it's something I can't. It's a basic function. And then there's stuff that's discretionary. It's like I shit, right? But it's to my discretion where I shit. And if I shit on somebody else's head, that's an act of an imposition. I've imposed my shit on their head. It didn't need to be on their head. It doesn't have to be on their head. But that's where I put it. All right? So that's the huge difference here. It's an imposition when you sit there, you know this is an act of creation. You know that you don't have to do it. You know that it's completely controllable. We see that everybody who does procreate, most 90%, 99% of them, stop at some number. They don't all end up at 18 kids. So obviously they can exercise control. So it just depends on when they've had enough, when they've produced enough children to say, oh, I've satisfactorily created an insurance policy. Maybe one of them will win the lottery and give me a free ride, or whatever game they're playing. But the fact is they can control it when they want to. So obviously if it's something they can control when they want to, but the shit ends up on somebody's fucking head, the risk is the person is exposed to it. It's just a fact. And you want to keep pretending it's not an act of volition? It's an act of volition. It's an action. It's not a non-action. It's an action. And all actions that are self-motivated, that implicate somebody else, are subject to being reasonably called imposing.
That life isn't an imposition. That imposition is connotative because it's already placing a negative value on life itself.
It's not placing it on life itself. It's placing it on the act of creation itself. That it's a high-risk act. I mean, again, if somebody builds a nuclear power plant in their backyard, it's not automatically a disaster. It doesn't automatically mean I'm going to get irradiated. But it certainly does mean that he's exposed me to the risk of it. All right? And that's the imposition. Whether, it doesn't have to be, it could be a pig farm. And the smell, it doesn't have to smell. The wind could blow the right way and I don't get freaking imposed upon. But the fact is I'm exposed to the risk. If the wind blows the wrong way, my life is ruined. That's the imposition. You can't see how that's obviously an imposition of risk?
And one might say life is imported. There's an importing. So the whole idea is...
I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, well, yeah, a man imported his penis. You could do this with rape. You could do this with abuse. I imported my fist into her face. I mean, this is just stupid. It's a deliberate, willful action.
That there's an intersection between sperm and ovum, and that intersection yields a child, and that child is...
Look, and we know that there's a whole bunch of cognitive activity that takes place long before any of that ovum sperm crap happens, okay? There's a whole procedure. We have all these cultural norms about how you conduct yourself and in what circumstances. We have all kinds of rules about this baby-making thing. So let's not pretend this is some act, again, that happens without our volition, that we aren't active participants. I mean, bullshit. Oh, damn it. Well, I'll get back to you and such. Alright, 4 hours later. Yeah, back. I think I left off at 3 minutes. I don't remember, but we'll see what happens.
So the whole idea is that there's an intersection between sperm and ovum, and that intersection yields a child, and that child...
Alright, whatever. Like I said, this is procreation is a decision. Neurology understands the mechanism. We're 2013. This is just mumbo jumbo bullshit. It's not just a biological function like your liver processing some chemistry or your kidneys processing chemistry or your stomach digesting food. It's a deliberate act. So quit playing this game.
Is born into the world. And
I mean, it's no more an active decision than if I was to go to Mars with a bag full of life and let it loose. It's an active, deliberate, knowable, quantifiable, probabilistic activity. It's known. It's not unknown. It's not mysterious. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by force. It happens by going through a neurology that says somehow this is something I should do. I should let life loose on Mars. I should build tyrannosauruses and build victims and put them on Mars so they can predator and prey each other to death forever. And there'll be something wise about that. I should implant fish in the oceans of some faraway planet so those fish can just sit there and chase each other forever. No, I shouldn't do that.
The idea is that denotation is saying just that. It's saying here's a child, here's sperm, here's ovum, here's a child, the child's born into the world. Now, the connotation is that life sucks, that life is full of negativity and
Well, whatever. The connotation, what people are saying is that what life is this bag of crap, a bag of experiences, and simple arguments have been made. You want to ignore them? These are the arguments that have been made. All right, I've made them more than once. It's like if you could go to the store and you had to actually ahead of time buy your life experience. Okay, you knew what you were going to get. Here's the cancer, the this, the that, all in a pile over here. Here's the good stuff over here in a pile over there. And somehow you'd have to make this thing work out where you somehow purchase your good stuff by buying it with the bad stuff. So the bad stuff is the currency you have to pay to get the good stuff. All right, and we'd have to just equal it out and apportion it, and if you found out what you were actually paying for your good times, you probably wouldn't buy them. And that's the argument being made. Not that every life sucks, that every minute of life sucks, that all this bullshit. No, that's not the argument. The argument is, on balance, it's not too good. And what I certainly know is that I'd rather not have been. So I'm an example of the I'd rather not have been. I think it's more payment than the profit. And I think it's obnoxious for somebody to tell me that I have to go to your silly amusement park. You think life is an amusement park where things get amused and they have a good time. I'm saying it's just a bunch of puke, and I think it's obnoxious for you to tell me you will insist I will go and participate and enjoy when I find it disgusting and obnoxious. It's like if you were vampires and you said, I'm going to make you into a vampire. Well, that's an imposition. You're being an obnoxious asshole to say that I think you would like being a vampire. Well, fuck you. I don't like your fucking human race. I don't like your values. I don't like the way you think. I don't like the way you smell. I don't like your nose hair. I don't like your ear hair. I don't like a motherfucking cunt thing about you people in principle. I think in principle you're pretty lousy descriptions of an evolving life form. I think you're stupid as goddamn rocks. It took you 10,000 years to figure out the God you invented doesn't exist. I mean, fuck, you're idiots. And you stink.
And so they go on and insist to keep pointing back to the root, that we look back to the root. And say,
yeah, just look at the function, okay? You can keep dreaming that you're doing something, but you're not. You're consuming so you can reproduce, and you're doing it in an environment of psychology, okay? Ego. These things of addiction and cannibalism. You know, where you're basically exploitionist. You exploit the environment. You exploit the other animals to create an environment you can exist in. Alright, if you could see the real price tag for everything you live in and on, how many animals had to, in some way or another, be consumed or have to live a life so you could have what you have. And again, and it's a mechanism that was built by crude forces, so there's no temperament here. There's no controlling of how just out of control it can get. And for you to impose that, to do it willfully and deliberately, just, yeah, in my opinion, is illogical.
The life itself sucks. That life itself is not something that's benign and neutral. Same thing with...
Well, I just think it's silly to say it's benign and neutral when you see in the world how unbenign it is. Elephant man disease, or, you know, as the grotesquest of the examples, but the brain tumors, the cancers, the horrible circumstantial deaths, the slow miserable deaths being crushed in a coal mine, all this shit that goes on here every fucking goddamn day. And do you say, oh, it's all benign because somehow I think my little adventures and my little joy moments somehow make up for all that crap? I don't think it makes up for any of it. I wouldn't impose to have my joyful life, right? If the real price tag was, yeah, 6-year-old kid's got to have chemotherapy for 3 years. There's no part of my joyful life that I think is worthy of a kid having cancer for 3 years. Not one single fucking, no way I can contrive that equation in my head that I have some valuable experience, like my first moment having sex, or the first this, or the first that, or the whatever virginal experience that you think are so magical and precious. I wouldn't say, let's duplicate that by torturing a fucking kid for 3 years. But that's the real practical fact. When you have a kid, that's what you're guaranteeing to exist in the world, you stupid fucks. So in my opinion, yeah, you're not only stupid, you're sadistically stupid.
With pain, suffering sucks, right? So they're not looking at what comes out of suffering. As a matter of fact, this is probably why.
I mean, what comes out of suffering? Again, this whole thing, character is a great thing, okay? So this, yeah, a little bit of suffering is a wake-up call. It can make you more empathetic, more of a human being. But by the same token, we know that too much suffering just destroys everything that you are, everything that you could be. It takes away your faculties. Migraine headaches don't make people brilliant thinkers. So this is just bullshit, these fucking goddamn cliches. So not only are you perverting language, perverting definitions, perverting the whole function of language, you're sitting there justifying living on cliches.
You know, the Nietzsche, why Gary's so against Nietzsche is because he said anything that can't kill you only makes you stronger. When
not can't kill you, it doesn't kill you. Okay, so you didn't even say it right. But again, it's just a cliche. It doesn't have any depth. You scratch at it just a little bit, you can knock the veneer off of that. And of course, yes, there is something valuable in you having to fight for it, having to practice, having to earn your gold medal. Yes, there's some kind of integrity to that kind of triumph over the adversity and all that kind of crap. But that's all just stoic, psychobabble bullshit. That's the ego again. That's the ambition, the ego, the driver, the desire. This is the contrivance of your brain. It isn't a value in the world, just as the Martian doesn't need to enter the Olympics and win the high jumping contest. The non-existent Martians don't need to do that.
he would be, you know, Nietzsche's bringing up the character of an individual after going through suffering, and how that character has developed, how it's gone through that suffering, and how now it's got a greater depth of character than it would have had before had it not.
Or else it's disabled by fear now, or disabled by some other, you know, it's crippled by the suffering. So again, this works both ways. It just isn't a truth of reality. All right, that suffering is intrinsically good, and any of that character building is worth the price you have to pay for it. And how many people go through suffering and don't build any character whatsoever? All they become is petty and angry. They become malicious, Karin bastards. They become things that just start hating on the world and making it suffer because they suffered. How many people have endured suffering and then they end up imposing the suffering? They get beat up as a child, they get abused by their parents, and then they beat their wife. How many people have done that? The complete reverse. They've become less of a human being through suffering.
Gone through that suffering. And so the whole idea is that suffering sucks now, right? As opposed to just suffering is. Pain.
Yeah, whatever. Suffering is, right. So just take away the substance of it, right? It is intrinsically and fundamentally every fucking word we have in our vocabulary to describe something negative is associated with a consciousness in some state of negative suffering character. Every single negative word. There's no way to even describe a negative without somehow it implicating a consciousness in some kind of distress. And so let's just pretend that isn't the reality, that it is a bad thing, and just say, oh, it's just suffering, it doesn't mean anything. We're just being silly to say it's not fun to be in pain. I mean, fuck you. It's just such crap.
Sucks.
I mean, really, it's not debatable from my perspective. I'm sorry. It's just not debatable. All right? I know what it is. I'm conscious. I've experienced it. You want to pretend it's a neutral state? Go ahead and pretend. I know the difference between having a pencil in my eye and not having a pencil in my eye, and I'm 100%, without any fucking doubt, convinced I'm better off without a pencil in my fucking eye.
Pain is. Pain is an experience that we go through, that we have periodically, right? For the most part, my contention is that we live in a neutral state, right? We're not need machines because our needs are filled. That's like saying...
Oh, that's crap. I mean, come on, people lament for things for decades. They're still waiting for the Cubs to win the World Series. You know, some tragedy, some grief happens. It takes them 10 years to get over the grief. They lose somebody, you know, precious to them. It's bullshit, alright, that we're all in some sort of blissful neutral state. Neutral wouldn't be blissful anyway, would it? But that's my argument, right? That the fact is that the neutral is the zero sum, and it is the bliss. The bliss is just escaping the negative. You escape all the encumbrances, all the burdens, all the necessities, the needs, the compulsions, and the ambitions, and the end result will be you will be crystal clear, perfectly pure, and in bliss.
You know, a car that needs oil, after it has oil, doesn't need oil any longer.
Right, but that's not how people are, right? People don't get oiled. And if we give somebody oil, then they want, you know, better oil the next day. We see that what happens to human beings, they're not satiable, they're insatiable. They've been designed to be insatiable, not satiated. There's no function if it's comfortable and satisfied. It won't do the consuming in the world, the cannibalizing, the exploitation. It won't do any of those things unless you give it incentive.
Right? If a child needs food, after it has food, does it need food anymore?
Yeah, right. How often, how many times did you just eat a big meal and then 20 minutes later you're saying, gee, I need something else?
If a child needs affection, comfort, everything that a child needs, quote unquote, doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah, who gets that anyway?
And I'm suggesting no, it doesn't need it anymore. After you've complemented the need with the fulfillment of the need, it's no longer a quote unquote need machine. Right? So this idea that we have...
Oh, whatever. I mean, I didn't even think you could get that crazy. I mean, you're actually going to try to argue that somehow the human race is satisfied? Generally speaking? I mean, you know, that's really reaching. I mean, it's nowhere close to the truth.
That we're need machines seems to be the case when there's not an adequate supply of whatever it is that needs to be there or present in order to fulfill that need. And then at that point it ceases to be that. We're not machines, we're humans.
No, whatever. So again, that's just more jargon, right? I mean, obviously we are machines. We function as a machine. We can be dissected as functioning parts, and we're a mechanism. We have a function. We're describing those functions. There's just no point in saying we're not a machine. We are a machine. We're a machine that produces consciousness as one of the phenomenon, and consciousness produces these motivational sensations. And that's what we're talking about. Is on balance, is there anything else but a huge prejudice towards the biological imperative? And if we're rational in how we view that biological imperative, I mean, it can be revealed for what it is. It's nonsense. It's made out of complete nonsense. It's a construct of your psychology that you perceive some need for humanity to exist. And it's, again, I'll argue, it's easily revealed as nonsense by the fact that you don't seem to sense any need for Martians to exist, or Moonicans to exist. There's perhaps 1 million asteroids in the asteroid belt, who knows how many. Each one of them could have a civilization. do you lament it? Do you lament their absence? I don't think so.
Right? And so, anyway, the whole idea is that connotation and denotation are very important when you look at the antinatalist argument, because they're constantly going to point at the negativity, and they want you to start with that premise.
Whatever. Yeah, it's a risk equation. They want you to appreciate that it's a risk and that there's reason to believe that fail-safe is the way to go, because there's no reason to, like, open the barn door kind of thing. There's no reason to let the problem be created. There's no reason to make a mess just so you can clean up a mess. So the smart thing to do is not to make a mess. What the hell kind of bug was that? I don't like bugs.
So you have to start, even before you get off the ground with them, you have to start with that premise. And so, and I'm simply saying, no, you can start with a neutrality. You can start by saying we're imported into this life via our parents. Even the idea of coming into existence.
We're imported into existence through a philosophical imperative, a decision, a perception of purpose. That's all. And the argument being made is that you can just easily have a different perception that creates no harm. There's absolutely no downside risk. You lose nothing of any real value, and you gain immunity from harm. It's sensible not to play with this fire. The universe doesn't need the fire to burn, and the fire burning creates potential for these circumstances that, in my opinion, even just in gross appearance, could never be compensated for. There are things being experienced for which, in my opinion, there is no monument, no thing we could build as an experience, no thing we could have as an experience that could justify that price tag. You're willing to impose it. You're willing to say, it's okay, I impose the risk. I will accept their irradiation. I will accept their toxic, horrid death as the price for what? Silly human being, sponge finger on thumbs, rah rooting for the home team. For what? For what human accomplishment? Disgusting.
As opposed to, you're nowhere beforehand, you simply start existing. You're either not existing, which doesn't make any sense to say you do not exist, talking about an individual.
Well, it makes sense in the sense that if you're going to compare two states, being born or not being born, yes, one state you have to concede it existed as state, just as for the sake of the argument, just to point out that there is an alternative. The alternative to existing is not existing. It has character. It has properties different than existing. It's just a fact. Not existing is different than existing. It's just the truth. When something exists, it is different than when it doesn't exist. What happens in the universe is different. I mean, there's just, you can't escape that truth. If there's an asteroid coming towards Earth and we blow it up, it's different than having the asteroid hit the Earth. There's an implication to existence and non-existence. It creates a different future. Shit.
Before life, you either are not existing or you're existing. No, that's not the case. You're just existing. So you're just existing.
Right, whatever, but that isn't the choice every human being has. They have the choice to create something that'll exist or not to create the thing that'll exist. And the world will be a different place with the thing they create or without the thing they create. So that's what's being compared. What's the implications of it existing? What's the implications of it not existing? And what's being argued is by all logical analysis, it's better not to make it exist.
Now, what is your state? Is your state negative? Is it negative at its core? And my contention, and it's always been this way, or I mean, it's been this way since I bumped into the antinatalist years ago, that no, it's not a negative, that there's not a denotative negative with the human experience.
Yeah, whatever that means, right? So you're saying there's, the net math comes out that somehow you're saying it's worth it. So your stupid, silly, joyful moments are worth giving a kid a cancer for 3 years. You would say yes. Let's say if I ended your life right now, took you to some purgatory place where you could sign a contract for some other living things, you would sign the paper sending Susie Silly Sally to the cancer ward and 3 years of bone marrow and chemotherapy and all that crap, so dospook's best moments of his life, the top 100 best moments, could be replayed in the theater of silly human conscious perception. And you'd say you would do that. You would say, yeah, I'm cool. What I did was cool. The experience I had was so kick-ass, it's okay to fucking impose cancer on Sally. And I'm saying that's preposterously obnoxious in my opinion. It's just grotesque. It's disgusting. Your values suck. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Fuck you. That's evidence of a lack of humility and character.
It's that the human experience is neutral at best with periodic pains and periodic pleasures. And
yeah, well, that's like saying nothing, well, I think on balance it's okay. Yeah, I think the proper number of lion cubs are dying. I don't think you need to kill more of them, and I don't think you need to save any of them. I think, 1 out of 9 is about right. So if 1 out of 9 lion cubs lives to its first birthday, that's okay. That's about right. Nature got it right. Sorry. And nobody can make this simple argument just saying that seems kind of too expensive to me. That seems like too high an attrition number. And we haven't gotten, like I said, we could go into the ocean and we could find attrition numbers in, the tens of thousands to 1 of an organism reaching maturation.
so that's my argument. And I don't think it's a word game. I don't think it's a word game to say this is where this is what.
Well, you can say you don't think it's a word game, but I almost say, like, come on, why don't you just lie through your teeth? Obviously, it's a word game. Obviously. The words have a definitions. The definitions are made of other words that have definitions. You're just playing with the sloppiness of human vocabulary. The fact that we have really sloppy words in our vocabulary, and you're just abusing that truth to pretend that you don't know what imposition means anymore. That it's not an act of volition where you impose something of some kind. You affect somebody else's life, usually for a selfish interest. Not because you're doing something generous or doing something to benefit to accomplish some purpose, but merely for your own purposes. And that's what the word is generally used to describe, and you're just pretending that somehow we don't have that general definition. We do.
And this is how individuals live their lives. So I'll go ahead and respond to Gary's video with this video and see what he has to say. Now, granted, he's going to come back with, talking about, needs, everything that he always says, because he...
Well, whatever. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to come back with the simple argument that's right. We create the need. The need doesn't exist in the world. So that's the fundamental first problem here, is that if you don't create the need, okay, you don't create the Martian who needs Martians, then Martians aren't needed. And there's just absolutely no loss there. Nothing is harmed, nothing is hurt, no potential is lost because there's no potential necessary. it's a function of the universe. The universe doesn't need anything, and we're pretending that we're a gift to it. And the argument's just simply being made that no, you can't make a gift, the universe, you can't make a food it can eat. And I know you want to do that. You want to be able to validate yourself and say, yes, we are food for the universe. Yes, we are functional. Yes, we are purposeful. Yes, we are meaningful. Yes, we do something. You want that to be true. But it's just a practical fact that it can't be true. Because there is no need until we show up to make it. That's the first argument. Then you get into the whole imposition thing, which is an ethical argument.
He is a broken record now. He's got his 4 qualifying: consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction, and my argument about those 4 is that at the initial core, the human organism is an animated thing with animated parts. And so it's animation. Animation is the root cause. Or not.
Oh, whatever. I mean, that again, to take no accountability for a good construct versus bad construct. It's just a sad, tragic truth. Right, it's a replicating molecule, so it's replication for the sake of replication. It's guided by crude forces, not intelligent forces. So basically, natural selection leads to the consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, and addiction. It can't come up with anything else. There's no other mechanism. It has to contrive meaning by creating the addiction. That's the very function. And it just creates the gladiator war. I mean, it's right there. It's apparent. It's fact. You can call it a broken record, but it's the truest record you could fucking play on planet Earth. There's not too many other statements more fucking explicitly true than the truth that that's what we are stuck in. That is a fact of fucking life.
The root cause is the root condition of a human organism. And then all of the negativity, all of the 4 branches, this is based on the negativity is based on a future psychology of the human organism. After the organism feels that it's growing up a little bit, it's on its own a little bit, it realizes there's some responsibility and some facts about its living and dying that it's going to bump into. After it realizes that responsibility and those facts, then it develops a psychology which in the case of, I guess, what, 1 out of 10? You guys are saying 1 out of 10 of us.
Well, what? They're going to make the argument again from popularity. So it's a meaningless argument, right? By popularity, then angels exist, and God exists, and Mohammed exists, and all this shit exists. No, it doesn't. The fact that most of the human race is a deluded asshole is a fact. It's another fact that's pretty damn solid, pretty damn reliable, that even if you were to concede that it's possible that God actually exists, it's not possible to say he's both Jesus and Muhammad. So, I mean, we know that at least a huge segment of the population has picked the wrong God, so they're deluded by that standard alone. So again, this is not an argument from some sort of credibility. 1 in 10 people will have enough character to step beyond the propaganda, the social memes of controlling culture, traditional notions. Yeah, and take an honest look at life and say, wait a minute, what is all this thing that people are just running with? They're just running. They've never analyzed what they're running towards. They've never analyzed what they're praying to. It's just wooden totem poles. They aren't real animals. They're just carved things in the wood. So yeah, they've looked behind the curtain. All right, there is no Oz.
Or people are going to hate their lives. Well, that's a psychological development. So the very basis of
Yeah, well, again, and the psychology always is going to play a part here, but again, it's you people desperately screaming from your psychology, it seems to me. Why do you care? Why are you concerned? What is it but only your psychology that has you somehow threatened by this idea that people would stop replicating mindlessly? That a bunch of people would voluntarily say, I'm not going to impose on a kid. I'm not going to play risk games. I'm not going to draw straws for other people. I'm going to mind my own fucking business. I'm going to try to be personally productive, and I'm not going to sit there and create something vulnerable to creating a huge giant mess in the world. Why does that threaten you?
Viewing the world as negative is psychologically built, and that comes far after you've already begun, after you've already been here. Right?
So again, you can use these arguments. You can call people pessimists, but again, I'm saying that they become pessimistic for good, rational reason. You're the ones who are being the silly. Oh, they just never learn. How many times do you have to have a hangover before you figure out how to drink right? How many times do you have a car accident before you figure out how to drive right? Yeah, you people seem to never learn any lessons ever. So, I mean, I could just call you retarded in the sense that your silly optimism, you know, the Einstein quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
So, anyway, that's the point. That's the point. Antinatalism is based on a connotative property at its core. That's the...
Well, it says you. So again, show me the connotativeness of the accurate description. You conceded it's fundamentally an accurate description of the human condition: consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. So how is that connotative? How is it inaccurate? Who cares whether it's even connotative? How is it inaccurate?
Basis on which you start, that life sucks. That's the root, right? But even to get to that point, you've already must have developed a...
Well, it's not even the first step. The first argument is that life is futile, in that it can serve no function. There is no need it can serve. It can only make needs. It can't resolve needs that pre-exist its condition. So it coming into the world does not satisfy a need. It creates a need. And that's a fundamental problem.
Psychology viewed the world and had some experiences where you're geared to view the world in a negative light, and so you view the world in a negative light.
Yeah, well, that's not true again. So, I mean, the only light one is seeking is what is the truth? That's the search. And your counter-argument is not one that makes the truth more visible. It's one that just creates noise around, creates a fog to make obscure what is obvious. Replication for the sake of replication. You don't like that. You are going to smear shit all around it until you can make that truth go away. But that's all that's happening here. It's a replicating molecule that has spread across the surface of the planet, and the agenda is crude and stupid, and the cost in terms of humans and animal suffering, sentient suffering, is insanely high.
It's not the condition that is the human experience. And I'm not bringing up, you know, unicorns. I'm not bringing up shamrocks and the other shit that I've gone through.
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter because you're negating the reality. So obviously, you know, you don't have to have a fable if you're going to just, you know, soap everything up so much that everything turns into a fable because you can't see anything. Create enough fog and it doesn't matter. All right? I mean, the light post is going to look like a leprechaun.
I'm simply just talking about antinatalism. So that's what I've got to say about it. And if you think that that's not an argument, if you think that I'm not making an argument by suggesting that antinatalists start out with connotation, then show me how you guys are using the most benign language to
Well, I don't know how else you can possibly describe it, okay? I mean, there's the most benign is the most unprejudiced, the most honest language. Is it something other than consumption? When something eats something, that's consumption. It has to consume something else, get the sunlight energy, the stored energy in the ground. It has to reconvert it. Yeah, that's consumption. It changes its form. It extracts the movement that exists in it and holds it inside of itself until it decides to express that movement. That's its consumption. Reproduction concept is too damn simple, too damn clear, quite obvious what happens there. Cannibalism, the idea of sentient eating sentient things of equal value. What do you think the Tyrannosaurus that ate a Stegosaurus? Do you think the Stegosaurus was less valuable than the Tyrannosaurus that was eating it? Do you think its conscious day that it needed to have a bad day more than the Tyrannosaurus needed to have a good day? Was there something other than brother eating brother there? Is there some fundamental practical difference between a Tyrannosaurus being killed and a Stegosaurus being killed? So how the fuck can the Tyrannosaurus possibly eat the Stegosaurus without it being essentially an act of cannibalism? He's destroying something of equal integrity to himself.
describe not only the human condition, but to describe the specific experiences that we have, whether those experiences be suffering, whether those experiences be pleasure. And that's going to complicate some things. That's going to complicate a few things because suffering sucks. It's not life sucks then. It'll change over, the card will turn and it'll be suffering.
Yeah, whatever. The price of life is too high. And it is impossible to resolve that problem because you can't make a profit out of living. There's no profit that could ever compensate for the price because there is no rescue mission. There's no damsel in distress. There's no fire. There's no need for a fire truck. There's no need to be racing to the scene. There's no reason to create a single victim because there's nothing to be accomplished.
Suffering sucks, right? And I've gone over with Trick for a long time about the nature of pain is simply is. When you're experiencing it, it's an is property. It's something that's happening.
Yeah, well, again, whatever. So that's your way of looking at it, and that's fine. You think it's okay for you to impose it on somebody else because you think your conscious experiences are worth it. You think that's okay. I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's rational to think it's okay. I think it's illogical and evil. I think it's both of those things. I think it's just plain fucking evil for you to think you have a right to exploit some other sentient creature to have what you want. And that's what life requires.
To the individual. The valuation is then placed on top of that experience, that is situation, and the valuation of that is negative. So I'll grant that after one applies the valuation of it, then it's negative. But the pain by itself is strictly an experience that the organism is going through on its...
Yeah, whatever. I mean, obviously it's an experience the organism is going through, and the experience has completely been modified, controlled, evolved, designed, loose definition of that word, to do exactly what it's doing. Create a negative, create a whip. That's the whole function of it, is to create something called negative. Don't do, repulsive, negative force, not attractive force, repulsive force. That's its entire intention of the mechanism. So don't pretend it's just some benign neutral. No, it was designed to be exactly not benign.
Procession from birth till death. Okay, so that's the contention. That's where I'm coming from. And yeah, I I want to hear the feedback.
Well, you got some. I think Jay Sounder made a video. I didn't see it. You know, I just didn't want to spoil my fun. You know, by seeing his video. So we'll see what arguments he makes too. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a lousy argument. You're basically trying to negate the existence of the hard negative that exists, and you're pretending that your ambition, your desire, is some sort of accurate reflection of real value. And it's not. It's a psychological contrivance. And again, it is revealed by simple analysis. You can see how full of shit you are, how much of a human-centric speciesist you are, by just analyzing how much you would give a fuck if we just change what the highest form of life on Earth is. Or we just migrate it to Mars and say, how come you're not really upset that the Martians don't exist?
I want to hear Gary's feedback on this because I think he's just going to reiterate the same tired stuff, and listen to it in his voice. Listen to his feedback if he gives me a response to this. Okay, cheers.
Yeah, whatever. I respond to, so many videos, even like the whole implication that somehow I'm avoiding responding to your stuff. I've responded to your videos in the past, and again, there's very little functional use to it. All right, because we have to speak some kind of common language, and it's just I can't accept people telling me that denying my own conscious experience, denying my conscious experience, which clearly says to me there's no benefit for me to stick this pen in my eye. There's a clear benefit for me not to do that. That there aren't equal states. Pen in the eye, no pen in the eye, doesn't matter. It's an insane notion. So anyway. Or something like that, anyway. But especially me, and then if I'm going to sit there and take the risk that I'm going to throw the pen at somebody else's eye to get what I want. And I'm going to take the risk that, okay, yeah, 9 out of 10 times the pen's not going to hit anybody's eye. But that 1 in 10 it will. And that somehow that's acceptable. I can take their eye, so I can have my glory moments. No, come on. There's no logic in that.